Hey friends, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing awesome today, and it's time to check out some more Reddit posts about some real wonderful individuals, so let's get into it. Neighbor gets expensive smart home appliances installed on Wi-Fi with no password. Calls the police when I let them know that's bad. I was farting around with a crappy laptop's Wi-Fi card and saw I had an access point I could connect to that wasn't there before. Signal was so-so and I had my own internet, so I didn't bother trying to use that one, so I sorta just forgot about it. About a week later, I was unplugging some stuff and accidentally unplugged my wireless router. And while it was unplugged, my phone found the next accessible Wi-Fi access point, which was the one I'd found previously and not really bothered with. Not my circus, not my monkeys, you know? Then my phone pops up saying I need to install all of these smart home apps to make the appliances work, which didn't make sense. I'm enough of an IT guy to know that unless there's a burning need for it, home automation isn't really the best idea. Absolutely no telling who can access that information. These people had their garage doors, heating and air conditioning, lights, interior and exterior, televisions and refrigerator hooked up to a Wi-Fi with no password. In the industry, we call that dumb as a bag of hammers. Once I plugged the router back in to appease the suddenly irate family members wondering where the internet went, I hooked up my dog and took him for a walk. Before I left the house, I installed the smart home app and turned on one exterior spotlight, and then looked for the house it was attached to. Presumably, if I was able to use their Wi-Fi, they were in line of sight. Once I saw the light was on, I turned it off to make sure. House was on the next street over, directly behind my house. There's a huge hill in the way that the builders left because Mother Nature didn't flatten my part of the country as a courtesy, so lots can be next to each other without being accessible. That meant going the long way around. My dog is an adorable 35-pound cockapoo who has much better people skills than I do. When I have to go talk to people I don't know, he comes along because he's about as threatening as a wet noodle. Don't tell him I said that. And I can't be that bad a man if my dog is as awesome as he is. So we make our way over to the neighbor's house, and I knock on their door. A nice older lady answers it. Old enough to have moved out kids, but not old enough to be considered a Q-tip in my humble opinion. She forgets to ask what I want and immediately goes gooey all over my dog. And her husband hears the adorable appreciation sounds coming from his door and investigates. He too is floored by my dog's awesomeness. There's about a minute of him getting all the attention, and I thought building a rapport. Before I remember why I'm here, I ask how they like their new smart home stuff, and they immediately start getting weirded out. Husband says, "We like it just fine. How do you know we got that stuff?" And I say, "Please don't take this the wrong way, but you don't have a password on your wireless. My phone connected to it by accident and told me about all the stuff you had installed." Wife cocks her head to one side and husband's brow starts developing a thunderous quality. I start talking faster. "I'm just here to let you know that you really should put a password on your Wi-Fi. Or anyone can use it to do stuff like open your garage doors." Husband's brow is now in full fury mode and he opens his mouth to presumably shout at me. But before he can, the wife says, "Oh, that's what the installer guy was talking about. He kept saying I needed to encrypt the thingy or something like that. We've never bothered with the password because it's a pain in the ass to set up and remember." Husband has gone from thunderous fury to bewilderment, and he looks at his wife and says, "Encrypt the what now?" I don't feel like getting voluntold to set up these people's network and appliances for them, so I say, "Okay, gotta go, bye." I power walk away from their house, and once clear, we mosey back towards my house. About 2 hours later, someone starts knocking at the front door to my house. I live in an in-law apartment in the basement of my parents' house, so that's not my door. My mother answers the door and then stomps down to the door to my part of the house, throws it open and tells me the police are here. Again, in a frosty voice. I hustle up the stairs and there's Officer Dave, not his real name, but the only officer my town at that point had who knew enough about computers to actually have a conversation with me, without getting a must-smash nerd face. I say, "Hi Dave, what's..." He cuts me off before I can even finish. "You promised me you were done with this crap after that whole Main Street thing. You f***ing promised, and now I look like an a-hole," said Officer Dave. Whoever had set up the timing on the stoplights for the main road through my town after some pretty serious construction did an absolutely awful job and traffic was horrific. Me and a locksmith friend decided to fix the problem after reporting the problem to town hall got nowhere. We didn't break anything. He picked the lock and I hacked the light, and then we locked up when we were done. We got caught on the last night. Only reason I didn't go to jail was because Dave backed me up and made everyone wait a day to see if traffic was better, which it was. I then promised him no more shenanigans. What? I haven't done anything, says I. Then why the hell am I getting calls about you opening and closing people's garage doors and turning their lights on and off? To be fair, that did sound like the sort of thing I'd do. Not to break into someone's house, just to mess with them. I'm mischievous, not evil. And then the light dawns. I point and ask, did you get called by the people living in that house? Because I went over there a little while ago to tell them they needed to put a password on their Wi-Fi. Only thing I did was turn on a spotlight to see which house it was. Nothing more than that, swear to God. They don't have a password? There's a thud as Dave facepalms. I let out a yup in sympathy. He sighs and says stay out of trouble, and I wave bye. Turns out the husband called the police and gave a vague description of me and the dog, and said I lived nearby. And one of the other cops gave Dave a hard time about him cutting me slack before he drove out to talk to me. The couple got a call back to tell them the issue is resolved, and please secure your Wi-Fi. 2 days later, there's a password on their Wi-Fi, and we all lived happily ever after. Except for getting the stank eye from that couple whenever I walk by. I wonder where this is, because you know you're in some backwoods small town when the city can't even set up a traffic light properly, and it takes some random hooligans like OP to break into and hack it just to get it to work right. Entitled mother puts her nearly drowned son's safety behind being found out for crashing a resort. This happened Memorial Day opening weekend of 2006, but feels like yesterday and all the details will always be fresh in my mind. My very first legitimate job at age 16 was as a lifeguard for both the indoor and outdoor pools at a large lake resort. It was my third day on the job. Anybody could access the outdoor pool, and since the resort was located in a state park, open to the public, we often had people coming up from the lake and the marina trying to swim in the pool. Anybody could buy a season pass or a single-day entry to the pools, and we had 2 employees that would periodically walk the outdoor pool deck to check for either room keys or pool passes. One day a woman that was letting her young son swim freely without any supervision was sitting at a table with an umbrella on the corner of the deck, slurping down alcoholic beverages. She kept sending her slightly older daughter over to my lifeguard stand to complain about things. My mommy wants to know why nobody has come to take another drink order. My mommy says the umbrella doesn't give enough shade and wants to know if we can move to the upper deck. The upper deck was reserved for guests of the resort and had assigned tables and chairs with umbrellas per room number. The third time this kid came up to me, without taking my eyes off the water, I told her to let her mommy know that the lifeguards weren't in charge of any of those things, and that I couldn't carry on conversations with anybody while keeping people safe in the pool. Daughter goes back over to mom. Mom walks over and pulls son from the water to talk to him for a minute, and then son gets back to swimming. I'm actively scanning and can see all of this. 5 minutes later, entitled mom comes storming over to my stand and demands that I give her a spot on the upper deck. When I refused to look in her direction and started to tell her she'd need to talk to the front desk, she somewhat quietly hissed at me about how rude I was being. Next thing I know, her son goes underwater. He's in the deep end where he can't touch and isn't a strong swimmer. He was holding onto the ledge but got distracted. I wonder what by, and let go. I immediately blow my whistle and jump in, pull him up and out of the pool, and start assessing him. The other guard on duty blows her whistle and empties the water. Protocol for a rescue there. Everyone is watching and entitled mom screams, "How dare you ignore my requests? How dare you embarrass my son and me like this?" She yanks her son up by the arm and starts pulling him towards their table, as I follow and tell her we need to wait on EMS to arrive, which the other lifeguard has called to the front desk and requested via radio. She screams, "He is fine and we are leaving." Son is coughing up water and crying, and I attempt to tell the mom about delayed dry drowning. By now the aquatics and resort manager are walking our direction. The managers both make it to us, and entitled mom is refusing to wait for EMS, screaming that she's a CNA and can care for her own son, that dry drowning isn't real, and that we can't keep them there. The aquatics manager asks her to stay long enough to fill out an incident report and refusal form, and the resort manager asks for her room number so they can be checked on later. This is when everything clicks. The entitled mom has no room number, which I already knew but didn't have time to mention to my manager. No pool pass and no right to be there at all. She's willing to risk her son's life in order to avoid this information becoming apparent. She snuck in after the last deck check and planned to leave as the next started, about a 2-hour window. Daughter is crying now, saying, "Mommy said we were coming here to swim and get ice cream." The entitled mom is screaming about suing me and the resort, and is belligerent enough that management determines she's drunk and can't drive with their kids. Park rangers show up, followed by EMS, and the rest is out of my hands, and I honestly don't know what happened to them. I do know the family was permanently banned from the resort though. That was the first rescue I had ever made, and I was commended for it by management and other poolgoers. It was a wild Sunday. I went on to be a lifeguard for nearly 15 years, at pools and lakes in the ocean, as well as to manage my own pools. I could tell endless stories of entitled parents and children that I dealt with on a regular basis, especially as a pool manager. But this is always the story that sticks out in my head, since it was my first job and my first rescue. We have to go to a meeting instead of a funeral? I'm a student of a public school district that was recently taken over by the state government. Early on into the school year, one of my classmates died. We weren't told how they died, but most of us think it was a suicide. The funeral for the student was scheduled on the same day a mandatory meeting for teachers in the district was scheduled. My teachers got into a week-long argument with the district about whether or not they can go to the funeral. The district said this: "You have to show up at the meeting." Cue malicious compliance. The teachers that were going to the funeral, I counted 8 but I'm probably wrong, showed up at the meeting. My teachers said that they, quote, "took one step inside then walked back to our cars." When at the funeral I counted 8 teachers and several consultants. Consultants didn't have to go to the meeting. And now the aftermath. Good news, my teachers haven't been fired. But there is some bad news. The district is cracking down on teachers speaking out against the district. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoyed, hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So take care and I'll see you next time.